Welcome to Life Stories, where we share heartfelt tales of love, resilience, and lessons learned. Today's story is about a woman who spent her life putting others first until she found the courage to stand up for herself and reclaim what was rightfully hers. With the wisdom of her late grandmother guiding her, she takes on a family battle that's both emotional and transformative. It's a journey of self-discovery, boundaries, and the power of truth. Don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories to join us as we dive into today's inspiring tale. Let's begin. The day it all began was like any other Thursday. I was buried in paperwork at my desk, trying to finish the quarterly projections that were due the next day, when my phone lit up with my sister Madison's name. She had a knack for impeccable timing, or perhaps I should say terrible timing. I sighed deeply, knowing that whatever she wanted would almost certainly pull me away from the mountain of work I had yet to conquer. "Rachel, I need you to watch the kids tonight," she said, her voice sharp and hurried, completely bypassing any polite greeting. "Chad and I have a really important dinner with his boss, and our sitter cancelled." I closed my eyes for a moment, pinching the bridge of my nose. This wasn't the first time Madison had called me in a panic, expecting me to drop everything to fix her latest crisis. Over the years, I'd become the family's go-to problem solver, the one who could always be counted on to clean up messes or fill in gaps. But today, something inside me bristled. I glanced at the stack of reports on my desk and shook my head. "I can't, Madison," I said firmly, though my voice wavered slightly. "I have a major deadline tomorrow." Her exasperated sigh crackled through the speaker. "Oh, come on, Rachel. You always say that. What could be so important? You're just pushing papers around." Her words stung more than I cared to admit. Madison had always dismissed my career as something insignificant, as though my long hours and endless deadlines didn't matter because they didn't involve glamorous parties or social media-worthy moments. I was about to respond when my coworker Reed glanced up from his desk nearby. He raised an eyebrow, already guessing who was on the other end of the call. Reed had heard enough of my family's demands over the years to piece it together without needing any explanation. "Actually," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "I'm preparing the quarterly projections Mom wanted done for the family business." Madison cut me off before I could say more. "Mom already said you'd do it. We're dropping the kids off at 6. Thanks, sis." And just like that, she hung up. I stared at my phone, the line now dead, and felt a surge of frustration so strong it left me momentarily speechless. I dropped my head into my hands with a groan. "Your sister again?" Reed asked, rolling his chair closer. His tone was a mix of concern and the faintest trace of humor, though he didn't smile. "You have no idea," I muttered, rubbing my temples. "She doesn't even ask anymore. She just assumes I'll say yes because I always do." Reed leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "You know you're allowed to say no, right?" I gave him a small, tired smile. "You don't know my family," I replied. "Besides, I live in my grandmother's house. Mom never lets me forget that she could contest the will if she wanted to." Reed's expression hardened. "That's manipulation. And you know it. Your grandmother left you that house because she wanted you to have it. Don't let them use it to control you." His words stayed with me for the rest of the afternoon, though I tried to push them aside. By the time I wrapped up for the day, my phone buzzed again, a text from my mother: "Family dinner tonight at 7 p.m. sharp. Need to discuss something important." "Perfect," I muttered under my breath, sarcasm lacing my voice. This day just kept getting better. Dinner was exactly what I expected. Mom sat at the head of the table, exuding her usual air of control, while Madison dominated the conversation, her voice animated as she recounted her husband Chad's latest promotion. I tuned her out, picking at my lasagna and wishing I'd made an excuse to avoid coming. I had a growing sense that I was walking into something, though I couldn't yet name what it was. "And that brings me to our big announcement," Mom said suddenly. setting her wine glass down with a deliberate clink. The room fell silent. Madison and Chad are finally ready to buy their dream home. That's wonderful, I said automatically, though a faint unease crept into my chest. Mom's tone carried an edge I couldn't quite place. Madison smiled brightly. The thing is, she said, her voice sweet but practiced, we need a slightly larger down payment than we expected. And, well, Mom suggested we could sell this house. My fork clattered against my plate, the sound louder than I'd intended. Sell the house? Grandma's house? But she left it to me. Don't be selfish, Rachel, Mom said sharply, her tone cutting through my rising panic. This is about what's best for the family. Madison has children to think about. Besides, you're just rattling around in this big place by yourself. I stared at her, struggling to find the words. My hands trembled slightly as I gripped the edge of the table. I'm not being selfish, I managed, my voice shaking. This is my home. Grandma wanted what your grandmother wanted. Mom interrupted, her voice cold and measured, was for this family to support each other. And right now, your sister needs our support. Unless, her words hung in the air like a noose, unless you'd rather I take a closer look at the terms of that will. For a moment, the room seemed to tilt. I stared at my mother, really seeing her for the first time, the calculated gleam in her eyes, the satisfied curve of her lips. She'd planned this. Madison reached across the table to pat my hand, her touch condescending. Don't worry, she said, her tone dripping with fake reassurance. We'll find you a cute little apartment somewhere. And this way, you'll be closer to help with the kids. My grandmother's voice echoed in my mind, stand up for yourself. Little bird. Don't let them clip your wings. I need some air, I said abruptly, pushing back from the table and heading for the back porch. The cool night air hit my face, but it did little to soothe the bitter taste of betrayal. Through the window, I could hear Mom and Madison already discussing paint colors for my house. This wasn't just a conversation. It was an ambush. And something told me they weren't planning on taking no for an answer. The cool night air wasn't enough to calm my racing mind. I sat on the porch swing where I'd spent countless evenings with Grandma, her gentle voice weaving stories of resilience and strength. She'd always called me her little bird, and in moments like this, I wished she were here to guide me. I could still hear Madison and Mom through the kitchen window, their voices brimming with excitement as they planned renovations and paint schemes as if my house were already theirs. My phone buzzed in my pocket, breaking my thoughts. It was a text from Reed. How's the family dinner going? I stared at the screen for a moment before typing back, they want to sell my house to fund Madison's new mansion. His response was instant, time to fight back. Fight back. The words struck something deep inside me. Grandma had always told me I was stronger than I realized. But for years, I'd let my family overshadow me. For years, I'd put their needs above my own, believing it was my duty. But now, something inside me refused to bend. I went to bed that night with a restless energy, the weight of my mother's veiled threat pressing heavily on my chest. My grandmother's house wasn't just a home, it was a symbol of everything she'd wanted for me, a foundation, a sanctuary, and a chance to break free from the endless cycle of giving in. The next morning, Madison called me repeatedly, her persistence wearing down my patience. By the fourth call, I gave in. What? I answered, my voice sharper than usual. I need you to take the kids to school today, she said briskly. Chad has an early meeting, and I have a hair appointment I can't miss. Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the lingering anger from the ambush the night before. Maybe it was the realization that I had been playing the role of a doormat for far too long. No, I said firmly. Madison's voice rose in pitch, her incredulity palpable. What do you mean? No. You always help. That's what family does. Family doesn't use each other. Madison, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. And that's exactly what you and Mom are doing, using me. Well, not anymore. Her silence was deafening. A rare moment when my sister had nothing to say. Before she could recover, I hung up, my hands shaking. It wasn't much, but it felt like the first step toward reclaiming my voice. I decided to spend the day clearing my mind. After work, I went home and climbed into the attic, a place I hadn't dared to enter since Grandma passed. There, beneath a single dusty light bulb, were rows of boxes marked with her precise handwriting. One caught my eye immediately: important papers. I sat cross-legged on the attic floor and opened the box. The scent of aged paper and faint lavender washing over me. Tax records, photographs, and Christmas cards filled the top layer, each one meticulously sorted and labeled. As I dug deeper, something caught my eye: an envelope with my name on it, tucked inside Grandma's old jewelry box. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter written in her unmistakable cursive. "My dearest Rachel," it began. "If you're reading this, your mother and sister are likely trying to take what's rightfully yours. I knew this day would come. I've watched them manipulate you your entire life, always taking and never giving back. But I've prepared for this moment." I read on, my breath catching in my throat as she described a video she'd left with her attorney. "Terence, go to him and ask about the video will. Tell him the little bird is ready to fly, and he'll know what to do." At the bottom of the letter was a photograph of Grandma, taken just days before her death. She held up a newspaper with a visible date, her eyes sparkling with life and clarity. On the back of the photo, she'd written a single line: "Remember the blue vase, little bird." My heart raced as I dashed downstairs to the living room. There, on the highest shelf of the bookcase, sat the antique blue vase Grandma had always cherished. Carefully, I lifted it down and tilted it, hearing the faint rattle of something inside. Reaching in, I pulled out a small USB drive wrapped in a note: backup copy of the video will, just in case Terence's copy mysteriously disappears. "You always were my clever girl." I sat down on the couch, clutching the USB drive like a lifeline. For the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. Grandma had known this day would come. She'd seen through Mom and Madison's schemes and had armed me with the tools to stand my ground. I called Reed immediately. "We have to go to Terence's office," I said, my voice resolute. "Tonight?" he asked. "Yes," I replied, holding the USB drive tightly. Grandma didn't just leave me a house. She left me a way to fight back. Terence's office had an air of formality that was both comforting and intimidating. The polished leather chairs, the towering bookshelves filled with legal volumes, and the faint scent of old paper reminded me of the will reading after Grandma passed. Back then, the room had been filled with quiet tension, my family feigning grief while secretly wondering who got what. Now, it was just me and Reed, sitting across from Terence as he examined the USB drive and the letter from Grandma. He adjusted his glasses, his expression unreadable as he scanned the words. When he reached the phrase "the little bird is ready to fly," he smiled faintly. "I've been waiting for this day," he said, setting the letter down. "Your grandmother was a remarkably sharp woman. She made it very clear to me that if this situation ever arose, I was to act immediately. She knew exactly what they'd do," I said softly, my voice tinged with both sadness and admiration. "She knew how they'd try to manipulate me." Terence nodded. "She did. And she left us everything we need to protect you." He unlocked a filing cabinet and retrieved a sealed envelope and a DVD case. "This is the original video will. Your grandmother insisted that I hold on to it, along with detailed records of your family's behavior. Just in case." Reed leaned forward, his curiosity palpable. "What kind of records?" Terence opened a thick folder and began laying out documents: bank statements showing loans I'd given to Madison, emails and text messages from my mother making demands, Even notes from family gatherings where they'd pressured me into giving up vacations or career opportunities for Madison's sake. Your grandmother documented everything, Terence explained. She wanted to ensure that no one could question the validity of her decisions. My heart clenched as I flipped through the papers. Seeing my sacrifices laid out so starkly was both validating and heartbreaking. For years, I had dismissed these moments as just part of being a good daughter and sister. Now, I saw them for what they truly were, a pattern of manipulation. Are you ready to see the video? Terence asked, holding up the DVD. I nodded, gripping Reed's hand for support. The monitor flickered to life. And there she was, Grandma, sitting in her favorite armchair, her eyes bright and her voice steady. Hello, my darling Rachel, she began, her tone warm and familiar. If you're watching this, it means your mother is trying to take your inheritance. I'm not surprised, though I hoped she'd prove me wrong. Tears welled in my eyes as I listened to her. She spoke of our late-night talks, her pride in my resilience, and her frustration at the way my family had treated me. Rachel, you've spent your whole life putting others first, she said, leaning closer to the camera. But it stops now. This house is yours. Free and clear. And I've made sure they can't take it from you. Then came the bombshell, a clause in her will that disinherited anyone who contested it or tried to coerce me into selling the house. If they make even one move against you, Grandma said with a faint smile, they lose everything, their inheritances, their trust funds, all of it. Reed let out a low whistle as the video continued. Grandma holding up a dated newspaper to prove her mental clarity and referencing her medical records and journal entries, all of which confirmed her sound mind. I made sure to document everything, she said firmly. This is my final gift to you, Rachel, the strength to stand up for yourself. The video ended, leaving the room in heavy silence. I wiped my tears, overwhelmed by the depth of her love and foresight. She thought of everything, Reed said quietly, his admiration evident. Terence cleared his throat. What would you like to do next? We can send a formal notice to your mother and sister. Or, before he could finish, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Have you made the right decision yet? Time's running out. I showed it to Terence, who raised an eyebrow. Well, he said, it seems they're not wasting any time. Neither am I said, sitting up straighter. Can you arrange a meeting with them here tomorrow? I want them to see the video for themselves. Absolutely, Terence replied, reaching for his phone. We'll make it happen. As we left the office, Reed turned to me with a mixture of pride and concern. Are you ready for this? I touched the envelope Terence had given me, containing Grandma's letters to Mom and Madison. I am, I said firmly. For the first time in my life, I'm ready to face them head on. Tomorrow would be the reckoning. And I intended to walk into that room not as the family's fixer, but as someone who finally understood her own worth. Grandma had given me the tools and the courage I needed to fight for what was mine. The next morning, I arrived at Terence's office early, my stomach in knots. Reed came with me, his quiet presence a steadying force as I prepared for what was bound to be a confrontation. Terence had everything set up, the video, the documentation, and Grandma's letters. This is airtight, he reassured me as we waited. Whatever they try, they won't get far. At 10 a.m. sharp, Mom and Madison arrived. They entered the office with an air of triumph, their heels clicking sharply against the floor. Mom's expression was stern, as usual, while Madison looked smug, clearly believing this meeting would end with my submission. I'm glad you've come to your senses, Rachel, Mom said, settling into her seat. It's good to see you're ready to do what's right for the family. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. Instead, I met her gaze steadily. Actually, I'm here to make sure you understand exactly what Grandma wanted. Terence cleared his throat, cutting through the tension. Before we proceed, there's something you both need to see. He pressed play on the video. and Grandma's image filled the screen. The effect was immediate. Mom stiffened, her hands gripping the armrests of her chair, while Madison's smile faltered. As Grandma began to speak, detailing her intentions and the clause in the will, the color drained from their faces. When she described the consequences of contesting the will, Mom jumped to her feet. "Turn this off," she demanded, her voice shaking. "This is ridiculous." "Sit down, Deborah," Terence said firmly. "There's more." Reluctantly, she obeyed, her face a mask of barely contained anger. The video continued, with Grandma outlining every instance of manipulation and coercion she had witnessed over the years. Madison's eyes filled with tears as Grandma mentioned the financial support I had given her, the vacations I had cancelled, the sacrifices I had made. "You've been keeping track of everything," Madison sobbed, her voice cracking. "That's so calculating." "No," I said quietly, my voice steady. "That's protecting myself. Something I should have done a long time ago." When the video ended, silence filled the room. For a moment, no one moved. Then Mom broke the stillness, her voice low and cold. "This doesn't change anything. We can still contest the will." "Actually, it changes everything," Terence said, opening the thick folder of documentation. "Here are signed statements from Trisha's doctors, proving her mental clarity. We also have video evidence, journal entries, and detailed financial records showing a clear pattern of manipulation and coercion. If you contest the will, not only will you lose, but you'll forfeit your own inheritances." Mom's composure cracked, her face twisting with anger. "You can't do this, Rachel," she hissed. "I'm not doing anything," I replied, my voice calm but firm. "I'm just finally standing up for myself." I reached into my bag and pulled out the letters Grandma had left for them. "She wrote these for you," I said, sliding the envelopes across the table. "Read them or don't. That's up to you. But either way, this conversation is over." Madison grabbed my arm as I stood to leave. "Rachel, please," she said, her voice trembling. "You can't just walk away." I gently removed her hand, meeting her gaze. "I can," I said softly, "and I am. We'll talk again when you're ready to treat me like an equal, not a servant." As I walked out of the office, Reed was waiting in the reception area. His concern melted into a small, proud smile when he saw me. "How did it go?" "Exactly like Grandma planned," I said, the weight on my shoulders feeling lighter than it had in years. The aftermath was quieter than I expected at first. For 3 days, neither Mom nor Madison called or texted. I thought, maybe foolishly, that they had finally accepted defeat. But Reed warned me otherwise as we ate lunch at work. "They're planning something," he said. "Your mom doesn't strike me as the type to let this go." Right on cue, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a screenshot of a social media post from Madison. Heartbreaking when family members take advantage of a beloved grandmother's declining mental state for their own gain. Some people will do anything for money. I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. "And there it is," I muttered, showing Reed. "She's trying to turn the family against me." Reed raised an eyebrow. "Good thing you have the truth on your side. Want to fight fire with fire?" I nodded, already opening my phone. I selected a clip from Grandma's video, the part where she held up the newspaper to prove her mental clarity, and posted it with a simple caption, "Since some people are spreading lies, here's the truth." Straight from Grandma herself. Within minutes, my phone exploded with notifications. Family members I hadn't spoken to in years began commenting, messaging, and calling. Most were shocked not by my actions, but by the audacity of Mom and Madison. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The ripple effect of my post was both swift and overwhelming. Family members began sharing their own stories, small, seemingly insignificant moments that, when pieced together, painted a clear picture of the years of manipulation and entitlement that had permeated our family. My cousin Erica recalled how Madison had insisted she reschedule her wedding because it conflicted with a vacation. My uncle Dan revealed how Mom had pressured him into a bad investment to support one of Madison's failed business ventures. The family group chat became a flurry of revelations, each one adding to the mosaic of truth. Then came the message I had been waiting for, a text from Terence. "Your mother's lawyer just called. They're backing down. The threat to contest the will has been withdrawn." I stared at the message, a wave of relief washing over me. I forwarded it to Reed and my cousin Erica, who had been one of my staunchest supporters since the drama began. Reed replied almost immediately, "You did it. Or rather, your grandmother did. But still, you stood your ground." It wasn't long before Madison called. "This time," I answered, setting my phone to speaker so Reed could hear. Her voice was tight with frustration. "How could you post that video? Rachel, do you know what people are saying about me? They're saying the truth." I replied calmly. "And it's long overdue. I'm your sister," she snapped. "You're supposed to support me. And you're supposed to respect me." I shot back. "But you never have. It's always been about what you want. What you need." "Well, that ends now." Madison fell silent for a moment. Then her voice dropped, soft but bitter. "Mom was right. You've changed. You're not the sister I knew." "Thank goodness for that," I replied and hung up, my heart pounding. 4 years. I had let her words cut me down. But this time, they felt weightless. I wasn't the sister she knew, the one who bent to every demand, who gave up her dreams to accommodate hers. That version of me was gone. The next few weeks passed in an unexpected calm. Mom and Madison remained distant. Though I knew from Erica that Madison was still attempting to sway some family members to her side, I didn't care. The truth was out there, and the people who mattered had seen it. One quiet evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Can we talk?" I hesitated, staring at the message for what felt like an eternity. Reed, who was over helping me sort through some of Grandma's belongings, noticed my hesitation. "You don't have to say yes," he said gently. "I know," I said. "But maybe it's time." We agreed to meet the following week at my house. When Mom arrived, I was struck by how different she looked. Her usual polished appearance was replaced by something far more subdued. She seemed smaller somehow, her confidence shaken. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," she began, her voice hesitant. I led her into the living room, where we sat across from one another. The blue vase perched on the shelf between us, a silent witness to everything that had unfolded. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Mom said, her hands twisting in her lap. "About what your grandmother said in her letter, about the kind of mother I've been." I waited, unsure of what to say. "She was right," Mom continued, her voice cracking. "I let Madison take everything from you. I let her take from all of us. And I threatened to take the one thing your grandmother left to protect you." Tears welled in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Rachel. You didn't deserve that." Her apology caught me off guard. And for a moment, I didn't know how to respond. "Why now?" I finally asked. "Why are you saying this now?" "Because I've realized what I've done," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And because I've read the letter your grandmother left me. She told me to look in the mirror and ask myself if I was proud of the woman I saw. And the truth is, I wasn't." She handed me a stack of papers, bank statements showing the money she'd given to Madison over the years. "I've cut her off," she said simply. "No more loans. No more excuses. She needs to stand on her own." Her words hung in the air, heavy with significance. For the first time, I saw a flicker of change in my mother, a willingness to take accountability, to break the cycle. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. "Thank you," I said softly, "for saying that. And for doing something about it." Mom nodded, her tears slipping down her cheeks. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away. Maybe not ever. But I want you to know I'm proud of you. Rachel. Your grandmother was right, you are stronger than I ever gave you credit for. As she left, I stood on the porch, watching her drive away, and felt something shift inside me. The weight of years of resentment wasn't gone, but it was lighter. For the first time, I felt that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. When I returned to the living room, Reed looked up from the pile of papers. How'd it go? Better than I expected, I said, a small smile tugging at my lips. She apologized. Real progress? He asked. I nodded. Baby steps. But they're real. As the autumn breeze swept through the yard, I stood by the window, watching the sunlight dance on the blue vase that Grandma had treasured so much. The house felt different now, lighter, warmer, as if the weight of the past had finally started to lift. My family wasn't perfect, and the wounds we carried wouldn't heal overnight. But for the first time, I felt hope. Hope for boundaries, for respect, and for a future where love didn't come with conditions. Grandma's voice echoed in my mind, stand tall. Little bird. You're stronger than you know. She was right. I had found my strength, and it was here to stay. Thank you for joining me on this journey of love, resilience, and rediscovery. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories for more heartfelt tales that inspire and uplift. See you in the next one.